Here we go. All right. We are back for episode 3 of Fantasy Football with John Chapman, our brainchild fantasy football analyst, and myself, Charles Barr, casual but dedicated fan. And here we are, episode 3.
I think you're a little past casual.
I think so.
I think the fact that the hours we have spent breaking down film and conversations, and I would say I'm well short of brainchild.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we just meet somewhere right in the middle, but I just like to exaggerate on both ends to even it out.
Hey, I'll take it, man. I'll take it.
You guys do the math on that, and that's where we are. All right, so in our last episodes, in our very first one, we covered running backs. In our second one, we covered wide receivers. And naturally, we've got to go to, the strength, one of the stronger points of a roster, the quarterback. I have it as the second most important position for me on my fantasy football team. So just like in the other podcasts, we have a tiered system. So we have elites, and then we have, I don't know what John has names for them, but the other guys, if you will.
Yeah, the other guys. And that's kind of where I fit my whole life, is just being one of the other guys. And I'm okay with that. You said you have quarterbacks, your number 2 position. I definitely have them my number 3, and it's a distant 3. I would go running backs are supreme, and that's kind of where it's at, and wide receivers, and then a huge distant gap between those to quarterbacks and tight ends. I do not value quarterbacks very much, and the main reason for that is just simple. Most leagues have 12 teams, and there are 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, which means you have a whole lot of extra available late in the draft and even on the waiver wire. So it's a whole supply and demand concept. There's a huge supply of quarterbacks, and you can only start 12 quarterbacks in a given roster. And so I do not value them very much. Obviously, in Superflex or 2 QB leagues, that changes. But, that's kind of my view on QBs.
Well, it's probably why I win so much more than you.
I don't know if that's true, but okay. All right.
We were actually counting it up before, but I'm going to say you're probably ahead. Yep, you are ahead if you don't count the ESPN leagues that I signed up with people I didn't even know, and I killed them because they stopped playing in week 4. But anyways.
Respect, man. It's like if you could live out that dream of, man, I wish I could go back and play middle school sports now, I would totally dominate. That's your fantasy, that's where you are, man. You're that guy.
Yep, that's me. So, perfect segue, but not at all. Let's talk about elite quarterbacks. Who you got? How many guys are in that elite status?
Man, I have 3, and they're the typical 3. I have Aaron Rodgers, number 1, Tom Brady, 2, and Drew Brees, 3. And these 3 guys, if you have a chance to get them, you're just gold. The problem is I never, ever get them because I wait on quarterback every single time, and these 3 guys always jump off the board early, but they are so safe. If you start with Aaron Rodgers, the last 3 years, he's finished as the number 2, number 7, and number 1 QB the last 3 years. He's just a beast.
It's interesting that I'm just kind of thinking about how long has it been that it's been those guys. I mean, Peyton exited a long while back, but they've been the elite for so long.
It's unreal. We'll look back at this, and it's going to be kind of the golden age of quarterbacks because these guys have been playing a long time. Aaron Rodgers, not so much, but when you look at Drew Brees, he's finished as the 4, 6, and number 3 quarterback. But if you step back even further than that, there have been 9 seasons in the NFL where quarterbacks have thrown for 5,000 yards or more. He has done it 5 times. Drew Brees has 5 of those 9.
Crazy.
Nobody has more than 1, and he's done it 5 times. And so yard-wise, I mean, Drew Brees is just going to sling the rock. It's just what he does. And Tom Brady, he's Tom Brady. I'm a Niners fan, but I still would say Tom Brady's the best.
Yeah.
Unreal.
So in your rankings right away, I see that you have Rodgers over Brady. But even with the best supporting cast, that Brady has ever had, why does Aaron get the nod?
Man, the main reason is coaching, to be honest with you. And coaching matters in fantasy. So, this is a big deal. I do not trust Belichick. He is a matchup-driven coach, and he's going to exploit whichever matchup the other team leaves up. So if they have a weak run defense, man, Belichick will run the ball 70 times and have no issue with that. And so he's going to have times where he is under 10 points a game. Whereas if you look at last year, Aaron Rodgers didn't have one game under 10 points. Whereas Tom Brady, well, not that he had a lot, but he did have one. And so Aaron Rodgers, they cannot run the ball even if they wanted to. And so if it's second down and 1 on the 1 yard line, they're throwing the ball. Whereas you look at what LeGarrette Blount did last year for the Patriots, he ran for 18 touchdowns. So they're going to run the ball. It's a small difference, and I have all three of these guys in the same tier. But if I had to best play, I would take Rodgers.
All right. Respectable. Okay, so let's move on to another part of your ranking, though. Kind of have issue with. You have Andrew Luck over Matty Ice.
I do.
Problem.
I do.
That's a problem.
Now, they're close, though. I have Andrew Luck 4, and I have Matt Ryan 5. But I like Luck way more. And, I mean, the thing is this. Here's Matt Ryan's season-ending quarterback rankings. Okay, you ready?
All right.
15, 19, 8, 8, 7, 15, 7, 19, 2. That dude is up and down. He went from 19 to 2. And Shanahan, who I think is one of the greatest coaches in the NFL. Obviously, I'm a 49ers fan, so very, very biased. But he's up and down, and he's only had one top 5 finish in his entire career. Last year, he had his career highs in touchdowns, interceptions, almost everything. So what's going to happen? You look at what happened to Cam Newton when he lost the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl hangover is real. I think it could follow. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. With the same supporting cast, which I think that they have one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver course.
Julio's a beast. Mohamed Sanu, decent number 2 receiver, and then Taylor Gabriel can break it at any time. They've got 2 running backs that can catch it out of the backfield. And if they can get their tight ends in check and kind of make a difference, that could jump up too.
I'm going to tell you right now that it's crazy to me that Tevin Coleman is behind Foreman.
Well, the funny thing is the coaching staff would agree with you. If you remember, they bumped Tevin Coleman up ahead because this coaching staff was the one that drafted him, Dan Quinn, and they bumped Tevin Coleman up ahead of him before the start of last year in training camp and in mini camp and all that stuff, and then Tevin Coleman got hurt. And so they were like, all right, we'll roll with Freeman, and the dude crushed it. It was the number one running back last year, and he just has not relinquished that role. And it's going to be curious because he's in a contract year. They're going to have to pay him top running back money to keep Freeman.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to. I think they should.
I don't know. Tevin Coleman looks amazing. So sorry to get off topic because we're talking about QBs. But I have such large issue with this ranking that I'm willing to make a bet about it.
Dude, you haven't even heard me go off on Luck's stats yet. You sure you want to do this?
Go off on Luck's stats. I'll just think about
Luck
the whole time.
Think about Julio, and he's going to make you feel nice and warm and cozy. Not to mention the fact that T.Y. Hilton had more yards than him last year, but that's okay. Andrew Luck has already had 3 top 5 finishes in half as much time as Matt Ryan. He's the highest paid player in the NFL for a reason. And not only is that, Colts are not committed to the run. They have Frank Gore, and I love Frank Gore. I'll never say anything bad about Frank Gore. He's one of the greatest running backs in NFL history, and I'll stand by that.
Did the Colts get better this offseason? Did they get better?
And that's why I think they're so great, is because the Colts defense is terrible. And I want a great quarterback with a terrible defense because it's a shootout each and every week. Whereas Matt Ryan has a great young defense behind him, whereas Andrew Luck does not. And I think he's going to have to throw the ball more. So if you want to make a bet,
I do.
Andrew Luck over Matt Ryan,
yes,
I'm all for it, my friend.
Hold on. So let me come fire back. I think I said this in the previous podcast. Andrew Luck is – it was like somebody gave a person who didn't care about cars or anything, they gave him a Ferrari, and they didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know how to drive it. That's Andrew Luck. The Colts have not known how to support this guy, how to draft accordingly, and I have a high, thought that he will. There's a high probability that he will get injured. I just think he will. I think he's going to get injured because he was on his back all the time. He's having to make every play in the world. He can't last under that kind of pressure.
There's rumors saying he won't be ready for training camp. So there's a lot of basis for that. But
yeah, I just, again, and I know that people talk about the Super Bowl slump, and I think that's, there's some legitimacy there, but I'm a believer in Matt Ryan over Andrew Luck, not because of Andrew Luck's ability. I think he's definitely one of the more capable than Matty Ice. That's not the issue. It's his surrounding pieces, his coaching. Sorry. I think he gets put in the worst position ever. I feel for the guy, but he's not going to have better stats than Matty Ice. So let's bet.
All right. So I say, so we've done the alcohol scotch bet. Okay, so let's just walk through our bets we got so far. You said the Jags will finish second place or better in their division for a bottle of scotch. You also said Mike Williams will beat out Zay Jones in a PPR format for 2 Giordano's pizza or 2 steaks, Omaha steaks. And so now you're saying Matt Ryan will beat Andrew Luck. Oh, my gosh. I'd say let's make this something personal.
Okay, personal?
Yeah. How about let's see here. How about this? How about the loser has to share on this podcast their most embarrassing moment that is PG-13.
PG-13. And if
I feel like you have lots of embarrassing moments that are rated R.
Yeah.
So I don't want those. I don't want to frighten our listeners.
But I also want to say too, if it's PG-13, that if I know of an embarrassing memory of you, and if it's PG-13 appropriate, I get to pick it for you, and vice versa.
Done. I've never been embarrassed a day in my life, so I'm good.
Shake on it. Okay.
All right, moving on. What else you got for me, boss?
Moving on. Okay. Who is a QB you can wait on in the later rounds that will give you an above average production? So this question was made for John Chapman because that's how he drafts.
Man, again, I wait. And so I've got about 5 or 6 quarterbacks that I've got highlighted, and I am waiting until 2 of them go, and then I'm picking a quarterback, okay? Because there's so much quarterback depth this year. It's unreal. I'm looking down the list right now, and there are 17 quarterbacks that I absolutely love, 16 that I would start with confidence. And so having said that, keep in mind there's some caveats with each one of these, but that's okay because if I'm waiting on a quarterback, I'm going to take 2 QBs late. Number 1 is Big Ben. Man, I love Ben Roethlisberger. I've got him sitting at 10, but he's dropping. I've seen him available at 14, 15, and 16th quarterback available.
Wow.
And so if you're drafting Big Ben, that's great, but just understand he has the biggest home and road splits of any quarterback in the NFL. It's over a touchdown, passing touchdown difference when he's at home versus when he's away. I have no problem starting Cam Newton, who was the number 2 quarterback last year. I'll take Carson Palmer, no problem. And again, I mean, Brady's going super late. If you look at where he went last year, this is the range he was going in. And he finishes the number 2 QB. So keep that in mind. And these guys are available. Marcus Mariota, 17. Jameis Winston, 15. Phillip Rivers, 13. Dak Prescott, 12. Tyrod Taylor, 18. I mean, there's so much available. Carson Palmer, number 24.
Where do you have Phillip Rivers?
So I like Phillip Rivers. I have him at 13. So he is number 1 on. And whenever I say QB2, I mean QB1 is 1 through 12 because there's usually 12 teams. You start 1 quarterback per team, so that's the top 12. QB2 is 12 or 13 through 24.
So you have Dak over Phillip Rivers.
Oh, well, I think you kind of have to at this point. Dak outscored him last year, and it wasn't even close. The upside with Dak is huge. He was the most consistent quarterback in the entire NFL with 20-point games. Dak Prescott, I mean, the guy just balled out last year. He had 11 games over 20 points. That's more than Aaron Rodgers. That's more than Drew Brees, more than Kirk Cousins, more than Tom Brady. He was tied for first. The only other person was Matt Ryan, your boy. The guy's just consistent. So
What I hate most about him is that he seems like a nice guy, and I'm like, dang it, I want to hate you. But then on even the SBs tonight, he just seemed like thankful and humble. I'm like, oh,
it's hard. Just focus on that DUI he had right before he got drafted. That's the easy one.
I can always
But
rely on you to know the criminal history of every NFL player in the league because I know.
also, I do know a lot about that, and I'm not a Cowboys fan. In fact, I grew up in Dallas, lived in Dallas almost my entire life, and I hate the Cowboys. But Dak's pretty legit, man.
I know.
And usually what I say for a person is he is a Ray Lewis Award winner, and I can't say that for Dak. He's pretty legit.
Yeah, okay. And I will say RG3, man, we were really talking about that cat after his first rookie year, too.
Yeah.
There's a handful of guys out there. Sorry, you can't tell me that people weren't crowning the Redskins for the Super Bowl after RG3's rookie year, because that's the case. Or even a Colin Kaepernick, who I still think is a very talented quarterback.
So, number one, never draft Art Briles Baylor football players because they do not succeed in the NFL. Number two, 49ers plug here. Kyle Shanahan pounded the table after they drafted RG3 to get Kirk Cousins. Look how that's paid off. Yeah, and so I'll say this. I'm trying my hardest to find something negative about Dak, and here's the only thing I could find. He was awful against the Giants. So if you do get Dak, get another quarterback. They play the Giants twice a year, and plug that other guy in. Me and my perfect scenario, I want Big Ben and Dak as my two quarterbacks. I'm starting Big Ben every single time he's at home, and I'm starting Dak Prescott every single time Big Ben is on the road or Dak is playing the Giants. That's my perfect pairing for those two for the quarterback position.
My only thing with Dak was, and again, people, because I'm an Eagles fan, people say you're just being a hater. It's not true. I didn't see him get through his progressions a lot. I think he went 1, 2, bounce around, maybe give it a run. Because again,
he didn't have to, right? And so this is an honest critique, but he had all the time in the world. One, because he had the best run game in the entire NFL. Two, he had the best offensive line in the entire NFL. So if he saw one, if one wasn't open, he looked at two and he ran it. And what's crazy is he had 6 rushing touchdowns last year, and I really think that number could go up. And that's the thing. Anytime you get rushing yardage from a quarterback, you'd be surprised at how it turns out. And so if I was to ask you, what would you say about Tyrod Taylor last year? How do you think he did as a quarterback? Where do you think he ended?
I want to say he probably ended because a lot of those were shady, but a lot of those were dump-off passes too. Man, I'm going to put him maybe inside the top 15.
Yeah, very good. 14. He finished at 14. And, I mean, that's the thing. When you get those rushing downs, it changes everything. He had 6 rushing touchdowns as Tyrod Taylor, 580 yards. And that just bumps him up. I mean, it changes everything. These are people that Tyrod Taylor finished ahead of. Marcus Mariota, Ben Roethlisberger, Cam Newton, Tom Brady. I mean, Carson Wentz. It's unreal. It's this sneaky kind of mindset because it's a lot of hidden stats there.
Let me say one more thing, and then we'll move on to the next question. I think what gives Dak even more value, even though I still take Phillip Rivers over Dak personally, because him and Mike Williams are going to put some of that to rest. But I think what makes Dak even more appealing is that defense is going to give up points. He's going to have to score. I think they're going to be a higher volume offense than they were last year. I think that's hands down.
Yeah, I agree. I
don't have the numbers. We don't have the analytics, but here's the deal. You lose that type of players and not just lose and suspensions. And they might not lose these games. I'm just saying that they're going to become more high volume. Ezekiel Elliott probably gets more usage. That's even a stronger case for him. Dez probably has 10% more targets. That's even more for him. So the Cowboys in and of themselves, I see them on the field on offense a bit more than they were last year even.
Good stuff, man. So what you got for me next, boss?
So here's a question. In your top 10 rankings, who is the riskiest player to draft?
Man, I'm going right back at you. Matt Ryan. just the volatility and where he has finished year in and year out scares the mess out of me. Big Ben, a lot of people go after Big Ben thinking if he stays healthy, he's going to be that top guy. He finished this number 16. Now, again, you plug in his home stats, he'd be a top 5 QB, but he is awful on the road. And so it's just bad. So those are out to me that I would not reach on.
So there's this issue sometimes, I think, when we think about where to draft people. And I think that sometimes there is some trickery in thought that happens when you connect really good players to quarterbacks sometimes, and you think that their production is somehow on par or helps with the quarterback's production. So how can some QBs be below average and have a wide receiver that's elite? It seems counterintuitive. For instance, like I see a lot of guys really high on Eli, but that guy, his numbers don't support where he gets drafted sometimes, but people associate him with OBJ.
Yeah, and so like if you look at Eli Manning's numbers, so he finishes the number 21 QB, but he had, Odell Beckham, one of the best receivers, period. And so if you look at the passer rating for these guys, so Eli had over 120 passer rating when thrown to OBJ and under 80 when thrown to anyone else. And so that's a thing. Plus, you throw in the fact that Eli throws so many interceptions. He's thrown 14 interceptions at least in the last 8 years. That's bonkers, man. Like, he's not going to be a top-level fantasy asset. And so those low touchdown numbers for him, for how many throws he makes, it doesn't really matter. So if you just want to put that in comparison, Brady threw 166 fewer passes than Eli, but had 2 more touchdowns. And so that's the thing. You've got to focus on your number one target. And even, again, Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, it doesn't fit. You have to have more than one, and sometimes 2 or 3. And so now one thing that I do love to do strategy-wise is I want to pair those lower QBs with the stud receiver. So if I'm getting an Odell Beckham in the first round, then I would love to have Eli Manning as my second quarterback if I wait on quarterback. If I get a stud QB, I don't want 2 quarterbacks. If I get Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, I'm not getting 2 QBs. I don't need that.
Right.
But if I'm waiting, I want two lower tier QBs. I'm going to try to pair one of those with my number one wide receiver.
So let's get into you, though. So where are you taking a QB this year? Where do you feel comfortable?
That's a great question because I'm in a MFL 10 best ball league right now, and I am coming up with a third pick, number 11, the 11th pick in the third round, and Aaron Rodgers is sitting there. He's still there. And so I think I'm going to wait. I would say the earliest that I would take a QB, even if my number one quarterback was there, is the top of the 4th round. Then I'm okay with it. But in all likelihood, in a redraft and dynasty league, I'm waiting until the 9th or 10th round, and I'm just going to see who's available.
What about a 12-man standard league?
12-man standard? Yeah, 9th, 10th, 11th round.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Who do you suspect you'll find in the 9th through 11th in a standard 12?
Yeah, man. So if I'm looking there, I'm telling you exactly who I've gotten. So I've gotten this person 3 times already. I'm getting Matt Stafford and Andy Dalton.
Wow.
Those are the guys I'm getting. And I'll say thank you every single day. Now, Am I winning championships with those guys because of those guys? No, I'm not. But what I am doing is I have more running back depth than anybody in my league every single time. Because when they spend that 4th round pick on whichever quarterback you want, Andrew Luck, Matt Ryan, whatever, I'm grabbing Tevin Coleman, Eddie Lacy, Dalvin Cook, Mike Gillislee. And so it's just kind of you got to trade it out. It's just what works.
I agree. I think that even though I do have a high value on QBs, I know that seems backwards, but I still have that value on them. But I think that there isn't a really large gap, too, between end-of-the-year totals with a lot of these guys. So I still find that value there in the later rounds. So I agree on waiting as well. We're going to get into one of our favorite bits, and that is talking about division. So our division in episode 3 is the AFC North. I'm going to start with you this time. Give me your rankings of this division.
Okay, so AFC North, it's a pretty tough division, and it's a very clear last round place, so I'll start there. The Browns will be in last place. I've got them in the 4 to 8 wins range. Now, they have a lot of talent. I would be okay saying they have more talent than the Bengals and the Ravens, but they have no playmakers. Quarterback is a giant question mark, and it's hard to learn how to win in the NFL. When you've lost for so long, you expect that.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to make that transition. So I got Browns getting last place. How about you? Who do you got last place?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because they have this roster that I'm an NFL Madden guy myself, big time. That's not a team at all I would shy away from in Madden. They have kind of like those athletic guys who you love to play with. So, but in the NFL, no, last place.
Yeah, I'm with you. Third place, I got the Ravens, just barely ahead of the Browns, 4 to 9 win range. They've got a poor O-line outside of Yonda, terrible receivers, even though they picked up Macklin, who I like a lot as far as fantasy goes. But they've thrown the ball more than any NFL team in the last 2 years in a row. And that's just not how you win games in the NFL.
Yep.
You got to be able to run the football. You got to be able to play defense, and their defense is not very good. They have 0 linebackers that have committed and covered up murder, and that was kind of their thing, and they don't have that anymore.
So I'm going to guess that next up for you is the Bengals.
That is correct. The Bengals, 6 to 9 wins. Man, they are building so backwards from the outside in, which I disagree with. If you look at their picks, right? John Ross, they got Joe Mixon. They're just building outside away from the ball, inside, and I think you should go the opposite way. I think they have one of the worst O-lines, them in Seattle, probably the 2 worst offensive lines in all of football. And I just don't think you can go far with that. I really don't.
That Mixon can make something out of that O-line, though? You think he can do it?
I do. That dude's talented, man. Again, he's a Ray Lewis Award character winner. And so I think he can do a lot. I can't stand the guy, and I think he's a terrible human being, but the dude has talent. And if you just watch his film, the dude shines.
What is the Ray Lewis Character Award? That's a thing?
So, yeah, Ray Lewis helped kill a person and cover up the murder. And so I give that award. It's a specific award that I give to people that are terrible human beings. So Joe Mixon, hey, man, he is a Ray Lewis Award winner. So I just say congrats to you, man.
You know what? You caught me off for a second because sometimes you know things that I don't, and I think that was a real award. I was like,
that's a real college award that they give to like good players.
He's nice on TV, but I'd be scared near him.
No, these are just terrible humans that unfortunately are athletic, and we allow them in our society to still be heroes, which grosses me out. But you got to play with what you got. So I have no problem having Joe Mixon on my fantasy team. The Bengals have always taken in these kinds of players. Pac-Man Jones, Perfect. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's just kind of who they are. And the dude is talented.
So are they going to keep those 3 running backs? I mean, could you see them trading one of these guys before?
No, they're keeping them because they're so cheap. So Jeremy Hill is still playing out his rookie contract, and it's super, super cheap. And he'll still get goal line work, no problem. Gio Bernard, they just signed to a contract extension. He probably won't be ready. He's probably going to be on the pup. So he might not be out till week 6. So you got to keep Jeremy Hill. Jeremy Hill will not get a deal. He'll be with another team next year. This is his last year on his contract. So this year they'll keep all 3 as insurance. But Jeremy Hill will be gone next year, no doubt about it. And so if you're in a dynasty league and you have Jeremy Hill, just hold on to him. Because if he goes to a winning team like the Patriots, or let's say he goes to Philadelphia if Garrett Blount isn't there a year from now, the kid could land in a positive position. And keep in mind, he scored more touchdowns since he's been in the league than any other player in the NFL. So, any other running back. So keep that guy. They'll keep all 3 this year.
So obviously, by deduction, we have the Steelers at number 1. But I'll say I could kind of see the Bengals under some right circumstances sneaking into that number 1 spot, just because out of all the number 1 people in the division, barring the AFC South. It's a really not a weak number one because the Steelers aren't weak, but they're just not dominant in their division. Like you don't know, and so
Right. And if the Bengals had a decent O-line, man, I'd be with you. I'd be right there with you. But gosh, they lost Whitworth, and he was the cornerstone of that O-line, and they didn't replace him.
yeah.
They're just expecting backups to step in, and I don't know, man. I don't see it. I'm not a big Marvin Lewis coach either, and so I think the talent is there, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I also am not a believer in the Steelers defense. I think that's
Right.
a phrase, Steelers defense, that has so much marketing behind it or history behind it that you just get this feeling like, yeah, it's tough. But it's not. I mean, the Eagles decimated them week 3. And they're fast. Shazier, he's as fast as a running back. Well, congrats. What are you guys stopping? I just am not a big believer in their defense. So that's the one reason, again, I'm not necessarily sure they're the number one clear.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh, well said, man. And I'll say this, man. I love going through these teams. It kind of lets you know where you stand on everybody and kind of how you see different teams. It's fun, man. I enjoy it.
Well, this has been podcast number 3. And next week we're going to do tight ends, which, again, that's a fun kind of conversation. You see some people who are not afraid to take Rob Gronkowski, or even back in the day when we had the whole Jimmy Graham, Gronkowski kind of thing going on. We'll kind of update all that, kind of talk philosophy, and we will see you on Laters on the Min, Jay.